See if I can record. Nope. Does somebody else have the recording permissions?
Yep, go ahead.
Are we recording? Sweet. Okay. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to the May 16th edition of the Contributor Experience Community Call. If you have not done so already, please add your name to the attendees section of the agenda. The agenda can be found in the calendar invite for the meeting. So we're going to start out by hitting our recurring business first. So are there any new contributors on the line, new people to this call that would like to introduce themselves? You don't have to. Okay. Host for the community meeting. How are we looking for that? Paris is giving me a thumbs up, so I assume that we're good. Outreach for Meet Our Contributors / office hours. Paris, are we good for that? Another thumbs up. Groovy. And then graph for the community meeting graph of the week. Does anybody have a graph that they are eager to share with the community?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Tim, Josh, anybody else?
Been super busy this week.
Yeah, I know, same.
In theory, it would be fun to share some of the performance graphs, but frankly, I was just going over with SIG scalability this morning, how incomprehensible they are. So probably not a good idea.
Okay.
Maybe next week.
Yeah. Right, we'll get it fixed in a week.
Maybe next week.
Actually, I was working quite hard on the graphs, porting everything from Influx to Postgres, and all Kubernetes dashboards are working using Postgres database on the test server, but it's for the end user, there is no difference. So it's just a matter of changing the database engine. So that's all.
And Lucas, anytime you want to talk about dev stats too during the community meeting, feel free. You have a slot. Like we have reserved a slot every meeting now for a graph. So if you have something to say that pertains to dev stats, feel free to use that time. Okay. I mean, it doesn't sound like this is necessary, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I would rather like to comment somebody else about graphs because I am the one who creates them. So probably it's better than someone is presenting some graphs or requesting graphs, and I can only answer questions and things like that.
Okay. So I think we might skip this week. The community graph of the week.
Yeah, I actually have this in a separate section, but I think we talked about last time is if it took some pressure off, we can alternate between graph of the week and maybe cap of the week.
Okay.
And that might not make us feel like we have to provide 52 graphs a year of data.
I believe our commitment was 2 graphs a month.
Okay.
Was our goal. So I think we're still okay on that. Okay. So launching into the new business part of our agenda. So we have the OSS license verification. Christoph or Tim, do you want to talk about that?
I can kind of give a lead in. So Aaron Krigenberger pinged me last week because he knew I had a little bit of experience in this particular space, and he mentioned that Brian Grant had mentioned that there's this ticket out there, and he thought it was something Contribex should run with, and he said it in a way that Aaron took the impression that he thought we were running with it, and Aaron kind of thought, I'm not sure, so I'm going to poke a few people and make sure that this doesn't just sit on the table as Aaron is stepping back for a bit. So the issue is linked there in the minutes, and the basic idea is that when Go vendored code gets pulled in for an update or re-vendoring, whether for a new bit of vendoring or an update of existing vendoring, it's important to comprehend the licenses of those components and make sure that they're compatible with the overall licensing of the project. And ideally, on a project, you do that with automation. So whether it's a pre-commit hook or CI testing to ensure that things are okay, there's a need here for some tooling. And then linked off of that issue was a PR just recently and some kind of homegrown tooling to try and do some license validation. But this is a particular space where there's a ton of existing software out there that does similar. And it seems like maybe a bad place to reinvent the wheel. And this is a wheel that I think is really often reinvented. So if we could figure out a way to go with something that's established, then we get the benefits of open source scale. We're leveraging the kind of the collective hive mind of the open source ecosystem there. So in the PR that's linked off of the issue, the conversation kind of revived there, and one of the questions that I'd had was like, well, okay, so CNCF maybe, or somewhere from a governance perspective, we need to understand what is the project overall license and what incoming licenses would be understood to be compatible with that. And I don't think that's been answered yet, but then the idea of CNCF having licenses to use FOSSA came up, and I think that's where I'd kind of hand off to Christoph to talk, because he was going to look at that. And then I see that Matt has his hand up. So maybe Christoph, if you want to discuss FOSSA just for a moment, then we can kind of open it up for broader discussion.
Yeah, actually, Matt had brought this up. We had talked about this very briefly back in March, and Matt had actually brought up and highlighted FOSSA as a SaaS solution that would handle this, because it was, it was raised back in back about a year ago.
Yeah, this issue is originally a year old.
That it was originally opened, but it was kind of like a best efforts basis thing, and then the CNCF had poked the steering committee about it because they had actually identified like, hey, there's a couple licenses here that are like vendors of vendors that don't comply with our licensing under Apache 2. So the steering committee kind of got poked at it again. And yeah, so Matt had raised FOSSA. I looked into it, and the biggest kind of initial issue was cost and how they would bill, because they typically bill on developers. But it appears the CNCF has negotiated a free plan for CNCF projects. So yeah, in that meantime, between where we had highlighted FOSSA as an option, but there's a potential cost issue, Ryan Hitchman at Google, who does a lot of work for SIG testing, had kind of whipped up basically a very similar type thing where he takes signatures of the open source licenses that we know about, and is able to very quickly compare and do that as a kind of a homegrown solution. Which the solution that he has is a very nice solution, but it's very Kubernetes specific. And at the moment, there would be like another kind of vault of work to get it to be portable so that we could enforce it automatically on all repos in our org. And then there would also be the continued upkeep of that kind of system. So I think my personal view on it is it's a good backup option to have. But if there is something off the shelf that does this and CNCF has already paid for it, then that might be at least something to explore first, to make sure to see if it does fit us, and if it doesn't, then we do have the skills and a fallback option that can handle for Kubernetes. Matt.
So I was talking with, it was either Dan or Chris over at the CNCF earlier this week, and they have I think it's non-FOSSA tooling to go evaluate this stuff. I'm forgetting the name of a tool, but there is an open source tool that a bunch of companies even use to evaluate their own stuff that we could go off and use. And I think the Linux Foundation uses it. So if we reach out to probably Dan or Chris, they can probably point us in the right direction. I was chatting with them about this topic today because we were looking at stuff around Helm, and we were punting that until I get some of the other stuff done. but they're like, we can jump all over that. So they'll know what licenses are acceptable, and they have tooling to be able to support projects with that today. We just have to go figure out what it is.
Sorry, and you said non-FOSSA tooling? Because I actually had, after Chris had put a comment in that PR saying like, we have a FOSSA license. So then I pinged him on Slack and be like, what are our steps to do that? And he said like, just get me an account of somebody who's an org owner, and I can like connect the dots as far as getting you into FOSSA to at least try that. So I wanted to discuss and at least get some sort of idea of direction here before I did anything there. But he was more pointing in the FOSSA direction.
And maybe that's the direction they want to go now. There was another tool. I looked at it and I went, oh, that's ugly. The first few times I looked at it, and I like a service to do it, so I like FOSSA. So if we've got something in that direction, but because it's legal licensing, if they've got a recommended way and they know which licenses and how to handle it, I love punting it to that.
Yeah, the person who works at this at LF, I'm pretty sure, is Kate Stewart. And she works on a project called SPDX, which is like a data format that
but there's a bunch of associated tooling around it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm pretty sure Kate is the person that would answer these questions, I think.
One of the concerns, so part of me agrees with Matt, like I want service in as much as somebody is maintaining the scanning logic, because finding a license within a file is actually extremely complex, and then mapping all of the variations of white space and spotting that somebody made a slight wording change, like the tools that do this well end up really quite complex, and there's a mess of licenses out there in Go library package code. So I think there's a serious maintenance concern here. But on the flip side, I also worry if this is in mainline automation. Now, maybe it triggers only if vendored code has changed, but I worry about the build process having to call out to an external service during checks versus everything being self-contained.
Yeah. So I put this in the minutes and I just dropped it in ContribX as well. So that's Containerd. That's their FOSSA dashboard. So it hooks in like, Travis or other CI systems in as like with GitHub webhooks, and tracks license status. So it would do a status context in the PR, just like the CNCF, like the CLA check, or all of Prow's checks. So it kind of has that integration. I would want to verify how it works, as well as make sure that it doesn't do anything weird as far as setting the PR statuses, so it doesn't trip up any of our tooling around Prow and Tide. That would be, to me, that would be a deal breaker if it did any of that. But on the surface, it looks like it's something that, again, that we could just kind of punt and let somebody else take care of, because as well as policy, if we're on the CNCF's account, if they have like policies around which licenses they deem acceptable that, may deviate, like there's other people that can go in as far as the legal checkboxes. So it's not either us taking that on or the steering committee. Like traditionally it's been like Brian and Tim who've handled that coverage.
Yeah, and the CNCF is the legal entity responsible for this. And so if they have a recommended way that they want us to handle this, it's probably in our best interest that the people who are the throat to choke, for I can't think of a better term right now, on it, to go with their path on it. Because at the end of the day, we're not the ones who end up being legally responsible for this. They are, right? And by the way, two quick other things. SPDX lets you kind of shorthand write licenses into stuff. It lets you do that in like package JSON and stuff like that. But when people flex, it basically gives it a quicker path. But the other project that I was thinking of is called Fossology, if you're not familiar with it. And that's the one that a lot of folks will also end up using.
I'm going to put those in the notes, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. What I would recommend at this point is I would like to evaluate, like, if, Chris is saying that, all the CNCF projects get access to FOSSA, and that's kind of their recommended way of doing it. I'd like to put that up for evaluation. I'd also like to coordinate with Ryan, who's already put work into this, as far as like developing out a homegrown script and like what the license comparison does, because I would like to wrap him into that process just from he's already invested time into it. And we will want to make sure that, like, hey, if we're going to go with something like FOSSA, that it doesn't, like, there isn't something that it's missing that we could build ourselves better or do better in our processes. Does anybody have any objections to that approach? Okay.
I do have one maybe mild objection. When we get into the whole idea of who can do it better, right? I think only if maybe our requirements aren't met, we try to do it. Not so much if it's better, because we are very much strapped thin with a million things to do. It can be easier to say, you know what, I could write this a better way. And just to be careful that it's not around our definition of better, but maybe more around it doesn't meet some requirement that we legally have from the CNCF and we can articulate. So therefore we need a gap to fill in that we have to go do, rather than our definition of better, because it's so easy to give ourselves carte blanche to go recreate the wheel. And that's just a constant nervousness of mine.
I'd even go further and say, like, if we find a gap like that, the first step is to talk to them, assuming we've gone with them, and say, like, hey, this is a gap, and are you interested in filling it? Because it makes them better as well. And yeah, my biggest thing here is that we're not reinventing stuff, because that's a huge cost. And this idea of better is highly, highly subjective.
Yes. The good enough model of open source development.
And I'll be honest, Fossology is what a lot of big enterprises use, where their legal people are all over it. So if the way of going is to use the service and it doesn't work, then we should probably talk to the CNCF about what the fallback is, because they're the ones who are legally responsible. This is going to fall back on other projects. This is a bigger question than just us as Kubernetes.
Right.
There might be other things like Fossology that will work for us, even if it's not pretty, that makes everybody feel comfortable and safe with, the lawyers anyway.
Okay, George, I think you have the next two agenda items.
Yeah, so I forgot where I brought this up. Was it at the last community meeting or this last meeting? Is if you look in GitHub and PRs, there's a lot of KEPs incoming, and a lot of them are major things. And I was wondering about perhaps having a section in the off weeks from the charts or whatever that would be like, hey, so so-and-so has submitted a KEP. He's, he or she's looking for feedback. Maybe things that kind of like put the fact that these are out there and their proposals out to the wider audience so that they can comment on it. Especially now, we seem to be really getting through the community meetings a lot faster, and we should probably, if there's important stuff to talk about. So I don't know, should I add a template? Should I maybe, like, how should I approach this? Should I say, hey, who wants to go first tomorrow? Like, how do you, like, do we want to do this?
George, what's your ideal outcome of sharing these KEPs? Is it really just to raise visibility, or is it to get some sort of feedback? Or
yeah, a little bit. Let's say someone's doing a KEP and it was like, hey, this touches 3 SIGs or whatever, and here's my proposal, and this is the PR. I'm closing comments in like 2 weeks, that sort of thing. Like, it doesn't need to be, unless it brings up a bunch of stuff that needs to be discussed by a bunch of people, then, it could be as easy as, okay, these 3 KEPs are new in the pipe, and these 2 have switched to implementing mode or whatever.
I do worry a little bit about that being conflated with some sort of decision making or some sort of tacit approval.
Yeah. I also noticed that there's naming collisions now with KEPs. So the way they did it in the KEPs folder, there's one number that says next KEP. But if your KEP doesn't get merged, I think my KEP's going to end up not being KEP 7, depending on who gets merged first. And I have a lot of questions about that. I don't know if do we just make it the 5-minute Caleb show or what?
I need to write a KEP saying, let's stop this incremental integer numbering for KEPs. Because it's stupid that we're even discussing the numbering.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, the only concern so Joe brought this up to me. He was like, there's a lot of stuff happening in KEPs, and if you're not paying attention in GitHub, you might miss it. And since you finished a meeting in 27 minutes, which is my fault apparently, he's like, maybe we could use that time to kind of get visibility to KEPs, get people looking in the right place. So
I like
having
a discussing it there.
Community meeting.
You stepped on each other. Sorry. So Matt seems to +1. Josh, what'd you say? Okay, and then maybe we can Jace, maybe I can talk. I should actually just talk to Caleb and then maybe put an explicit thing. We're here to give visibility to KEPs, not plus or minus either way, right? It's more of a visibility announcement thing than it is a. Does that work for you, Jace?
I think that's good. Yeah, just to get people knowing that they exist and that there's a place that they can centrally review them if they're interested. The audience that we have for the community meeting is so wildly varied that it doesn't necessarily represent a strong cross section of any particular strata of leadership or community input. So
sure,
yeah, I think starting with awareness is good.
Yeah, and I'll try to talk to Caleb today. He might have some ideas on how to make that better. Okay, I'm done, Elsie.
Okay, Paris, DockerCon?
Georgia, do you want to talk about the SIG update template?
Yeah, so I was thinking of also making the SIG update template. So right now we say you have 10 minutes, go. And I was thinking making it a little bit more like we did at KubeCon, that's kind of concentrate on things that are external to your SIG. But I can propose that and then do it through the list, so I'm not taking up too much time here. I think it would give the SIG leads some structure.
I agree. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, I will draft something and send it to the list then.
All right.
Your turn.
And DockerCon. I wanted to get a final call to who was going. I know Josh is going. I know that Tim Hawken is keynoting. He's going. I know Saad from Storage is going. Reason why I'm asking is we have a 3-hour Kubernetes contributor office hours. Office hours being no structure, so it's not like the workshop. Docker contributors and the like will be coming by to, ask questions. I'm sure it's going to be something along the lines of what SIG should I join? But if anybody is there and would like to help,
I'll be there.
Let me know.
So we have a CNCF booth then?
No, it's not a CNCF booth. It's an actual 3-hour slot that's in their community day. Other projects will be there too, like other CNCF projects, but it's not a CNCF booth.
Okay.
I don't know. I think CNCF might have a booth there.
Do you know if they're recording the session at all?
Yes, they're recording.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
I'm sorry, I've just joined. Which CNCF booth we're speaking about?
I was just asking if CNCF is going to have a booth at DockerCon in June.
Yeah, we're the sponsors, so we should definitely have there.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, if anybody's interested, that's what I'm just putting out the last call. I might add a couple. I'm not going to add slides, but I might put a slide up that has the new contributor workshop like bit.ly links and some other hot links that people might be interested in while they fly by, but not structured.
So who added this next agenda item? Discuss Kubernetes.io stats.
Oh, that's me, but you can have Eric go first. I'll go last.
Okay.
Kind of open-ended.
Eric, Feda, I actually put you on the agenda for the declarative org admin. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that. You don't have to, but I saw it come through, so I wanted to give it some time.
Sure, I have a PR out for that, and it is going to allow us to say this is for a given org. Here are the members that we want, and here are the admins. Here are the teams, and here's who's in each team. Then we can send PRs that's add and remove people to there, and so hopefully make it a little bit more obvious why and when we're adding people, and make sure that the actual org member list is what we want, and there's no extra or forgotten people in there. There's a design doc out, and if you have feedback, I'd be interested in having you guys leave a comment on it. I don't know if there's any. Do we have any particular things you want to discuss?
So after you get your feedback, what's your next steps, Eric?
Implementing it. Yeah. And then, I think the first step would be, I'll probably just start with taking a dump of our current org configuration and using that as the initial configuration. And then, yeah.
Would architecture or steering committee need to weigh in on this?
Potentially.
Chase or anybody else on the line that wants to weigh in there, if that's the case?
It could not hurt to get initial discussion going in office hours for architecture. So I would put it on the agenda for tomorrow if you're so inclined.
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, it has feedback from Joe, Beta, Tim, and Brian at the moment. So I can toss it onto the SIG architecture list.
That'd be great. It's bit.ly/sig-architecture is the agenda for that.
Glancing through the design doc there, it's not entirely clear. Are the names just the GitHub user IDs that you'd be tracking?
Right.
Okay. So we avoid the potential issue of having personally identifiable information.
Yeah, I would think that, we'd want to put this maybe in a repo that's private to the org members or something like that, since I think org membership is private. But there's other orgs outside of Kubernetes I know that are interested in this, so I want to design it to be sort of the base thing to be generally applicable to any large org that wants to manage themselves this way. I think we might want to have some additional layers that maybe help make it easier for Kubernetes to, like, the specific dialect of Kubernetes weird things we want to do. We could sort of take a maybe secondary configuration that generates this first one. Like how we have both, Kubernetes and Kubernetes SIGs. Maybe we want the members of that to be exactly the same or something. But to start out with, I want to just sort of have a basic dumb thing, which is mostly concerned with here's the membership list that I want, and then reconcile that with the actual membership list in GitHub.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. Anybody else have anything for questions, concerns, comments? Also, put those on the GitHub issue as well, or the doc that I linked in the agenda. I'm sorry. All right, George, you're next.
All right, I'll be fast. Let me just share my screen real quick. Everyone's favorite thing in the world, numbers. Can you all see that? So part of my KEP was to share weekly how the Discuss Kubernetes prototype is doing traffic-wise. And then over the course of the prototype, we'll decide if it's a success or not. So we basically kind of soft.
My new camera.
Sorry. So basically the way it works is we kind of soft launched last week after I got the domain set and everything with Tim, and I started to let the numbers generate. Everything earlier here is like when it was like me and Josh like posting and stuff like that. So I'm mostly concentrating on this part of the graph. We have about 265 users signed up and 14,000 views in the last few days. Now, we were kind of limping along, and then Joe mentioned us on TGIK, which really helped, and that brought us an influx of new users. And the amount of new users coming in is good. The amount of posting is not as awesome as I'd like. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing people who typically don't have a place to post things. So we had a few people in Slack that wanted to announce projects that they were working on, and maybe they were spamming somebody. So we encouraged them to post there instead, that kind of thing. And more ecosystem things where people would feel uncomfortable posting that to the developer list. And I'm also running a giveaway for new users to like win a Kubernetes t-shirt, that sort of thing. One interesting thing is we used a live thread this morning during office hours for people to post questions and paste notes and stuff back to each other. And I felt that went pretty well. That's why it's probably the #1 topic right now. The only thing I could really use help with is posting content. So we're getting people signing up and reading and looking, but getting people to interact has been a little bit harder than I would have liked. So if you have something interesting to post, even if it's an announcement, you've already posted it, do me a favor and post it in the announcement section. And I'm doing things like every week I'll be posting the community meeting notes in a separate thread, that sort of kind of thing, to kind of give people content to consume and things like that. But any questions or comments?
Doesn't sound like it.
Yay.
Well, I like graphs.
I know, graphs are pretty.
Anybody else have any other things they wanted to bring up for contributor experience? Elsie and I are going to, in hopefully the next month at some point, start attempting to use GitHub projects so that we can keep our head on straight better and start to better manage umbrella issues and things like that. But we'll talk about that in greater detail as we get there. But better project management is on the way. Let's see, anything else?
Yeah, I have kind of a major issue, which is event teams.
Okay.
So Dan cornered me at Red Hat Summit and said for Shanghai and Seattle, he needs schedules for how many rooms we need and when. Like before, like honestly, within the next 10 days from now.
We talked to him on Monday.
Yeah?
Yeah, he was on the retro call. Okay. And I told Vanessa that we should just go ahead and reserve, what did I say? I think I said 7 to 9 rooms.
Yes.
For Seattle.
Yes.
And then I also did ask for a walkthrough. I said I would fly to Seattle personally for a walkthrough and see if we can get a better situation there. And George also offered, and quite a few other people offered as well. So
yeah, we do need to figure, like, we should probably figure out who's going to team up for what, because I think we told Dan that we would tell him at least who's going to confirm to them.
Right. So what about Shanghai?
So I can go to Shanghai.
Right. No, I was planning on going to Shanghai.
Okay.
We talked about me leading the summit team for Shanghai, or at least you asked me to do it. So
yeah, because I think it's just the new contributor workshop.
Right.
And yeah, of course. Please do, because that was awesome the last time. And we do have some local folks, contributors that have said that they would happily help you with anything needed.
Okay, cool. Do you have names? Because I'll desperately need Mandarin speakers.
Yep.
And how many people do we have? Yeah, I'm sorry. How many people do we have already committed to Shanghai from the organizational perspective? So we have George, we have me. Any other folks that will be involved into organizing some stuff, like contributor-related stuff in Shanghai?
So, I mean, I will go, but at the same time, if it's too many folks, then maybe I'll be like the last on the list, and if you don't need me, then I won't go. But I have at this point in time signed up for Shanghai and Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll be your second, Josh, if you want.
Okay.
I'll be your Guinevere, your terrible version of Guinevere. Yeah, we'll do that, and then Paris could bail on us, even though I was like, I'll go if you go. That's how I got hooked into this thing. Also, Puya from Office Hours this morning, he's a Kubernetes developer. He speaks Mandarin, and his wife is Chinese, and apparently he goes to China all the time.
Awesome.
That might be someone that we'll reach out, Josh. Actually, after this, let me know. We'll ping him.
Yeah, so let's collect a list of names, because I don't need more than one or two people.
Mm-hmm.
Two ideally, but looking through who actually has stuff. So we don't have any thoughts on doing any sort of existing contributor thing for Shanghai then.
No.
Okay.
Just an exact copy of what we did, except with like a translator and someone who makes it better for the locals.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, given the translation, so I'll have to get back to Dan on this. Given the translation, I'd actually like it to be more than 3 hours, because having to translate things will slow it down a lot. I'm thinking I'll ask Dan for a room for a full day.
Oh, what if we do we could do like a little meet and greet too, like meet current contributors, like after they graduate from the class, we give them a patch, and then like a couple of contributors come in. I mean, because I'm sure people will have CFPs approved. So I'm sure we're going to have, more than 10 contributors there, period.
Yeah, that sounds good. So
I can help out with that part. And I'll introduce you to some of the local folks in email this week, and maybe you can get a little sub-project team started.
Okay. So my suggestion for event teams was going to be, we kind of run it the way that we do the release teams, which is Contribex picks somebody to be an event lead, and then that person recruits a bunch of people to fill various roles. It's a simple structure, and it works reasonably well.
Sure. If you want to be number one in China, I'll help you, because like for me, Seattle's kind of like our home turf. So
well, Seattle, you're gonna need more people in Seattle.
Sure,
right? Because you'll have a massive current contributor track going on. So, and it'll take us a couple of cycles to kind of nail down what the roles should be. But for example, for Seattle, I think you should have a volunteer to be a communications role. Mm-hmm. So somebody who specifically is focused on just getting the news out about the contributor summit, instead of necessarily arranging the content.
Right.
Hey, can you start working on the the brief document that describes your proposal? Because from our perspective, it sounds valuable, but we have to work on the roles, responsibilities, and so if nobody's definitely against of this idea.
What are we proposing?
We need to have a spreadsheet for both this and Seattle, I think, started.
Yeah, like having the release time, release style events team defined with roles and responsibilities. Context.
Okay. I thought we discussed and approved that at a previous meeting, but
we all nodded profusely. We didn't write. Nobody PR'd anything.
Yeah. But no, it wouldn't hurt to actually have something down in GitHub just so people can see it.
Yeah, and you know what? We know when it's going to be, so just slap it in /events/2018, and then when we have the meetings on the Mondays with the CNCF, and then we'll just say, hey, we'll start with the GitHub source of truth. We'll link the spreadsheets in there, and then we'll just iterate every week. Does that sound what you want, Ihor?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, I have other things that are more debatable, like the idea of actually having a separate sub-project repo for events, but just because of churn.
Yeah, let's cross that bridge when we get there. But
we do have a separate sub-project for events.
But we don't have a separate repo.
Do we need a separate repo?
Why would we need a separate repo?
Why do we need it?
Yeah. The community repo does a lot of different things, but
well, once the contributor site is up and running, then it's going to bubble up all of that information that's already tucked in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a terrible looking version of the community site if people want to see it.
Speaking about the dedicated repo, I'm not sure that we need it because, like, from the ACL perspective, for example, all the people who are responsible for the general community management are also responsible for the events. So the separate folder is we have now.
I would suggest the one thing that we might need a separate repo for is if we want to have a continuous contributor playground that has bots set up but is not going to alarm and send out notifications to anybody who's watching the community repo. If we wanted to run more of those new contributor workshops, I think having a bot playground, a testing repo would not be a bad idea.
That's the separate question probably. We can split it, we may have the separate playground, but speaking about the events planning, events management, I'm not sure that we have to have the separate repo for all this stuff.
Yeah, no. Paris pointed out again that we're going to have a contributor portal. Website. That will make it possible to find a bunch of this stuff. So certainly we should wait until after we have that to make a decision on moving any repos around.
All right. Last call for anything else contributor experience related?
Just the final question from me. Probably have discussed that recently because I've joined so late. So what have we defined for our planning for our recent meetings on Mondays with CNCF events team? So before Copenhagen, we had a single weekly or bi-weekly meeting discussing both existing contributors and new contributors summits. This time we have Shanghai and Seattle, and we also have two major sub-events, for the new contributors and for the existing contributors in Seattle. So are we going to have the single call with all the participants who'd like to volunteer to drive this, or would like me to split them? Because we have agreed that I'll send the invitation, prepare and send the invitations today.
I think we should keep them together for now, so we can figure out because they'll share roles, we'll have shared goals, and then maybe closer to the actual events, we'll split off into teams. I think. Does that sound
That's good to me. Just asking your opinions.
Yeah.
So if there anybody on the call except of Paris, George, Josh, I hope I forgot. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody.
Tim.
So if there anybody who'd like to volunteer to drive these events, Tim Pepper. So if there's anybody who'd like to volunteer to drive these events in Shanghai and Seattle, please let me know, and I'll add you to this invites.
Wait, so this is separate from Summit organization? I'm confused.
No, anyone who isn't you that wants to join our team to help us organize this.
Oh.
Yeah. You're already part of the team. We've snagged you. Yeah. I'm going to try to get a few of my locals to help out, but I can't commit them to anything yet.
All right. Well, that's it. You have 10 minutes plus of your life back. And we will see you next week. Same time, same place. Thanks, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.